Okay, there we are. There's the man.
I love
You know
that
what we need?
background.
Welcome to New Mexico, or New Mexico Wood, or they're calling it all kinds of things these days. But as I'm looking at both of us, I'm like, that's what the show needed, was two bald guys. That was missing this
We're-
whole time.
We'll retitle the show "The Bald and the Beautiful."
Oh, okay, well, you will be the beautiful, my friend. But I don't qualify there. Hey, it's so good to see you. It really is.
Oh, it's good to see you, man. It's been too long.
It has been. Do you recall when that might have been?
Oh, geez. I want to say it was pre-pandemic, so like
Mm,
2020, early 2020.
Probably, yeah. Maybe even earlier, because I'm trying to figure out if the last time I saw you was at NBC Universal or on the set of a film that I made called Footsteps, where you were kind enough to lend me your many talents, which we're going to get into. Um, and yeah, I don't. But anyway, it was one of the, but definitely pre-pandemic for sure.
Yeah. And that I think back so fondly on that production. Just a little short film, but really with a lot of heart. And we had a great crew and a really great location for the day. And it turned out just really, really beautiful. It was something to be proud of.
Well, I thank you, Chris. I appreciate that, and I know my production partner Bob, who wrote the script with a writing partner of his. It was a really heartfelt story, and he was very pleased with the way everything came out. So, and it's got pretty good exposure. But before we go forth, I always forget when I talk with like people that I consider to be good friends. Even though we don't see each other, obviously, you've got your very, very successful professional career going on all cylinders now, which I'm very thrilled about. And I'm wandering around New Mexico, wondering how did I get here? But we'll talk about that. So, but let me do my little intro here. It
Sure.
is the Dave Beat is a C-List Actor Zoomcast with my very special guest. And tell me if I've got if these hyphenates apply. The Dave Beat is a C-List Actor Zoomcast with my very special guest, Chris Rose, reporter, actor, producer, covering the present, the past, potentially the future, concurrent. Did I nail it? Did I miss anything?
No, you're pretty much right on track. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I've
great.
done a little bit of everything.
Yeah, you have. And you, so speaking of doing a little bit of everything, so the tables are kind of turned here. And by the way, I've watched a lot of your news stories. Chris DeRose is a reporter for one of the most legendary television stations, and before that, or radio, KDKA in Pittsburgh, which holds a very, I don't know if you know this, Chris, KDKA holds a very special place in my heart because I grew up a radio fanatic, and I may have been like the last of the generation. This tells a little bit about the age. But I actually used to listen to like radio dramas, the last of the radio dramas. Your current employer used to have a show called the CBS Radio Mystery Theater, which ran until like the mid 1970s. And I used to listen with my little transistor radio in my bed at nighttime. And they were pretty scary stuff. But I digress. Being a radio fanatic, one of the things that I always knew was that KDKA was a pioneer in broadcasting.
And
And
we
of course,
Yeah,
please.
we're one of I think, don't quote me on this, but if you know how call letters go, like Mississippi River over to the Eastern Seaboard, almost every call letter begins with a W,
Right,
WGN, WCIU, whatever.
right,
And then from the Mississippi to the Pacific, it's all K,
right.
KLS, KMS, we are one of the few Ks on the Eastern Seaboard, and that I believe goes all the way back to our radio roots. So
Yeah, absolutely. And just as, again, a radio, I just always thought that was like the coolest thing that they didn't change the K to a W. And of course, all of us way out west now, you've had your way out west time, and I'm still way out west. It's all, the K call letter, the first call letter. So anyway, the other thing, so you are from, and again, I'm doing this from memory. I always advise my guests, don't study, don't prepare. But if I recall correctly, you are from Latrobe, Pennsylvania, right?
Latrobe, Pennsylvania, about an hour away from Pittsburgh. Yeah.
That's great. So, I mean, I forget, I have to say, so I'm assuming your favorite drink is the iced tea with the lemonade, the
Well, the
Arnold
Arnold
Palmer.
Palmer,
Yeah.
named after native son Arnold Palmer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not bad. I got to tell you, the other big drink from Latrobe, if anybody's a beer drinker, used to be Rolling Rock.
Oh,
Was
yeah.
the glass line tanks of Latrobe. They still have that on the bottle, although probably 20 some years ago, Anheuser-Busch bought out Rolling Rock. They essentially closed the brewery, they moved it, and they bought the name. The
Right,
brewery
right.
now is its own, it's still in operation, but it's like specialty beers and stuff, but it's nothing to do with Rolling Rock. But the Arnold Palmer and Rolling Rock are our big claims to fame. And then, of course, many people know that Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood used to broadcast out of WQED in Pittsburgh. Fred
Right.
Rogers was born in Latrobe.
Oh,
And
wow.
my claim to fame has always been I literally grew up in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Because
Oh, wow. Okay, that's it. That's a winner chicken dinner right there. Who did you ever see any of the Tom Hanks the Fred Rogers movie or the documentary about him?
So when we were both working at Universal, they did that doc in 2017, 2018, and we
Mhm.
did a special screening, I remember, on the Universal lot. I don't know if you went to that one,
I
but
didn't. I would have gone had I known.
it was it was amazing. And from what I've heard, if you've seen that documentary, you know it's an amazing documentary. From what I heard around the scuttlebutt on the lot when I
Right.
worked there was that when it came time for the Oscars, the people who are in charge of submitting, especially for documentary, just dropped the ball. They
Oh,
kind of forgot that, oh,
oh,
we have this beautiful Fred Rogers documentary that of course would win the Academy Award for
yeah.
best doc. And they just,
Right.
now I might be telling tales out of school. Maybe they submitted and it never came to fruition, but I was always very sad it never got its due. The Tom Hanks movie is good.
Hmm.
It's certainly not. Almost everybody I talked to said it was good, but it was not what I was expecting.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. It kind of took a different tact kind of with that reporter
mhm.
played by the guy that I love from that TV show, The Americans. I can't remember his name right.
Yeah,
Matthew Reese. He's
yeah.
terrific. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting angle they took rather than your standard biopic.
It's and Tom Hanks has actually shot now two movies in Pittsburgh. We have
Mhm.
a pretty it's small, but we have a pretty robust film office both here in Pittsburgh and throughout Pennsylvania. And actually, I did a story yesterday about how the state film industry is trying to increase the tax incentive from
Yeah.
$100 million to $300 million because literally they spend 25 cents and they make 75 cents back with this tax credit.
Right.
And
Right.
we have a really I've been lucky enough, I've made friends with the film office. They've invited me to their functions and their gala and stuff, but like it's so amazing. And I think it's probably even bigger in New Mexico where you are, but like it's amazing to see people living now where they want to live,
Yes.
where they're comfortable and being able to create, still have a job, go to
Right.
work. Sometimes those people have to like leave the state and go other places, but there's I think four major series filming between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia right now. They eat up
Terrific.
most of the tax incentive, but it's 800 people crews that are working
Yeah.
for months at a time. So people are working and there's a lot of production around.
Yeah, that's great. As a matter of fact, my first introduction to the Pittsburgh film community was discovering, I'd never heard of it at the time. Is it Point Park University?
Mhm.
There, and they have a pretty robust film department over there, if I'm correct. And there was a Showtime or a Stars, I think it was Stars series called The Chair, which was very much like the Green Light, Operation Green Light.
Mhm.
Is that what it might, or
Yeah.
HBO? They did their own version of it. Um, and it was all the main production. What they did was they utilized the facilities of Point Park University as kind of their HQ. So I don't know if for our filmmaking people out there, if you can get a hold of The Chair, it was just great to watch. What they did was they gave two different young filmmakers the exact same script that said, go make the movie the way you want to make it. And you
Mhm.
watched both of them go through their process. And then in the end, you watched both of their movies. And it was amazing to see how vastly different. It's the exact same script, but through the eyes of the creative, those movies were nothing alike, you know. But
Yeah.
anyway, I kind
It's
of digressed there.
Well, no, Point Park, I believe Dennis Miller went to Point Park. Michael
Right.
Keaton might have gone there. He's a
Oh,
native son.
wow. Yeah.
And we just lost him a couple weeks ago. Joe Flaherty from
Uh,
SCTV. He was a Point Park guy
yeah.
before going
Yeah.
to Chicago and Toronto. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and he was also, I think, was he the father on Freaks and Geeks? Am I thinking of the same
yeah,
thing?
he was so good on
Yeah,
that. One of the places I hit in my travels was Second City. And
yeah,
oddly enough, I want to say 4 or 5 months ago, I reached out to my contacts there and I said, hey, I'd love to do a feature on Joe Flaherty. I know he's getting up in years and I think he just has a great body of work, but he's a native son. He grew up here, he matriculated out into Chicago and Toronto and Hollywood. And they said, we love that. We know that Joe's not doing well health wise.
mm,
And I actually got to talk to Joel Murray via Messenger for a few, and Joel's a good friend of his. And he was like, yeah, I've checked in with the family, and they're not doing well. Well, he's not doing well, and he ended up passing. So the day he passed, and I hate to say this, but it's the way the news game is. The day he passed a couple of weeks ago, we had some of the worst storms we've had in a long time. Tornadoes,
right.
big lightning storms, flash flooding happening all over the place. And I could not get anybody to allow me, to do the story on
Yeah,
him, other than they were like, well, just do a mention. And I'm like, this guy's won Emmys. This guy he's
yeah,
great.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what I did was I did the story I had to do that day. And then I called my friend at Second City and we just talked for a couple of minutes. And even though I couldn't put together any kind of video thing for him, I wrote what I think is a nice kind of tribute web article that I then, put up on CBS.com. And
Great,
I was
great.
like, if nothing else, I feel like I tried to give this guy a little bit of credit, a little bit of his due, but he was great.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's great that you did that because he's one of those guys who, well, obviously working for 50 years, and even though his name might not necessarily have become a household name like some of his colleagues in the comedy world, but when you ask the colleagues who they think is like the funniest guy, if they listed their top five, he was always in that realm.
Yeah.
So good, good on you for for giving him his due.
Well, if
Um,
it makes you feel any better, I also pitched, and they're actually tentatively allowing me to do this. This July is Don Knotts' 100th birthday. Now he's passed away, but Don
of
Knotts was
course,
from Morgantown, West Virginia, which is in our viewing area, and
right?
they have a statue to him. They have a road named after.
Yeah,
The Historical
yeah.
Society remembers him. Plus, because I work for CBS, I can play as much Andy Griffith as I want in the piece and not get dinged for it.
Things you have to think about. kids at home, it's not always just appearing on screen. You got to think of the legal issues and the rights to whatever it is you're showing, or music and things like that. But I mean, Don Knotts, I mean, come on. He is a comedy legend, and it's amazing the staying power that Barney Fife, has. And of course, one of the movies that I thoroughly enjoy is I think Pleasantville with
Oh,
Tobey
he's great
Maguire.
in Pleasantville. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That
I
might have been
love
his
that.
last movie.
I think it might have been,
Mhm.
but he was so, as the TV repairman who, had a little supernatural thing going on there. But yeah, Don Knotts was just terrific.
Where do you fall on Ghost and Mr. Chicken? Because I watch it every Halloween.
My God, no, listen, I didn't think, well, again, doing the age thing, and I want to tell you, I am now thrilled to be kind of an elder statesman. For whom I don't know. Whoever considers me that, will judge them like that. But Chris, I saw The Ghost and Mr. Chicken in the theaters when it came out
No way.
with my brother. My mom took us to the theater. It was in Framingham, Massachusetts. I was I was probably 5 or 6 years old or whatever, and that organ music still haunts me to this day. But yeah, I mean, I love that movie, and of course, as somebody who has frequented the backlot at Universal,
Mhm.
we got to see the house that was the house of the Ghost and Mr. Chicken, because that house is still there on the
Yep.
backlot at Universal. So what I'd like to do now is to ask you, Chris, is let's take a trip back, starting at Latrobe, and what I want to know is, because again, you've worn many hats, and
Mhm.
you've been, in my opinion, and it's probably fact, pretty successful in all the endeavors you've attempted. So the fact that we're sitting here right now, you have the position that you have. I don't know. I still let myself do things, so I consider that to be a win. But when you're a kid growing up, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do in the entertainment or news or creative world? Or what was it that you saw that, was there like an epiphany, like, oh, I want to do this. I like this movie. I saw that. What was it that kind of sparked your, maybe the bug is this?
Well, I'll tell you, I trace everything back to I grew up in a very loving household. I had a very supportive home life. I had a very supportive school life. But I was and still am horrifically dyslexic.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
I even back then I had not only dyslexia but a very strong ADD. I was, and it was tough, and I
Yeah.
really didn't even learn how to read. I would say till fourth grade. I
Okay.
was able to actually read something on paper. It was
Yeah.
school was misery for me in
Yeah.
terms of
Mm.
academics. And I really wasn't, I was kind of poking along at this private school that my mom worked at. I got in for free because my mom worked
Right.
there.
Good.
And ironically, she was a special education teacher. So she knew that what was up,
Yeah.
and she was
Yeah.
trying to get me help.
Yeah.
But it was a really slow go. But in second grade, the class decided that they were going to do a a play based on Aesop's fables, which we were learning about. And
Right.
Aesop's fables, there's a bunch of fables and parables,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the one that I got cast in was the story of the lion and the mouse. So for those who don't know, the story is the uh, the lion taunts the mouse, belittles him for being small and weak and all this stuff, and the lion's so great. And then the lion gets caught in a net and can't get out. He's in a hunter's net, and the mouse comes along, seeing seeing the line in the net, choose through the net and freeze the lion. And the fable is, never, whatever it is, never look down on those who are
Right.
smaller than you, that kind of thing.
Right. Right. Right.
So I'm cast as the lion,
Right.
and I'm really like, I've thought about this in the past. The rehearsal process in second grade, I'm just like, we're not in class. I don't like, I'm standing here in this wig of a mane. I'm just goofing around. This is fun. I don't have any cares in the world. And I must have like taken notes well, because I would come out, I would say my line, which was free, free. I'm finally free, free from the net that held me so tight, free from the net.
Wow.
Oh, what a delight. Something like
You
that.
remember your dialogue. That's amazing.
I and for the life of me, I was trying to do a stand-up today on camera, and I had it right in front of me and I could not get it. I was like, what is going on?
The
But
human mind. Yeah.
so I remember show night came, and it was like, it was honest to God, Dave, I see it in my mind's eye like a scene out of a movie. It is
Right.
a black house in a middle school auditorium, and you can just see the silhouettes of shoulders and heads and little
Right.
pops from cameras, and the stage
Right.
lights, it's a full wash, and you can't see
Yes.
anything on stage. And we do the scene, and I get freed from the net, and I don't know if it was the energy or the notes or the combination of everything I had taken in, but I jumped up and I gave this free, I'm finally free. And I said this line, and
That's great.
the whole place went nuts.
Yeah, I bet.
The whole auditorium was going nuts. And for me, no one had ever, other than my parents, but no one had cheered for me. I'd never had a room of people
Right. Right.
cheer for me. And
Yeah.
I had the wherewithal as a chubby little second grader to stand there and go, huh, I like this. I don't
That
know
feels good.
yeah, I don't know what's
Yeah.
happening, but
Right.
this,
Right. Yeah.
and I need to figure out how I can do more of this
Right. Right. Right.
so that I can get more people
Yeah.
liking me.
That's you were kind of like, yeah, Sally Field, you like me, you know.
Remind me though, I have a good Sally Field story you're going to want to hear.
Oh, wow. Okay. And I would love to hear, because Sally Field and I went to the same acting school. She went before I did, but
Mm,
it's now defunct. Film Industry Workshops in Studio City, California. We used to go on the sets at CBS, what was that, CBS MTM Studios. Now I believe it's CBS Radford.
yeah.
And we would have our classes on all the TV shows that were filming at the time after they were done for the day, like 30 something. And now of course I'm drawing a Saint Elsewhere, where I met a
Yeah.
very young Denzel Washington, um, and a few of the other shows. But anyway, yeah, Sally Field holds a very special place in my heart. Let's get back to Sally in a moment.
Sure.
So when you so now you've got the bug, there's something kicking around in your mind, and you're growing up. Did you pursue a track in, say, high school that included the creative arts?
Yeah, I was your quintessential I turned into a jock because I love
Right.
football. I played lacrosse in the spring. Um,
Right.
and I was terrible at basketball. I tried so hard, but I was a big kid, so I was just throwing my weight around, getting fouls
Right.
left and right. So
Right.
I decided, okay, I got to scratch this acting itch, and I'll do that every winter. So in high school, I kept doing it through middle school. I kept performing in every play and every production we had. And then in high school, we had the winter musical. So if you weren't playing sports, you could do the arts.
Right.
Um, so I started doing the winter musical, and I really fell in with an amazing kind of group of high school nerdy drama kids. And
Right.
we did, oh boy, what do we, Cabaret, and we did Godspell, and there's one, oh, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Wow. Good stuff.
so we did all that, and then by that point, I'm thinking of college, and I'm starting to go, yeah, I like I'm not really cut out for much else. I
Right,
don't
right,
really, I don't really like much else. And
right, right.
you know, the funny thing, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, like my dad's an attorney and I would see, and my mom's a teacher, and I would see them get up every morning and they would put on their suits and then they would grab
Right.
a briefcase and in a way in my head, I'm like, this is what it is to be an adult. This is what it is to go to work. That like you come
Very
home.
robotic, very repetitive.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I somewhere, even as a young kid, I was like, man, that's not for me. That
yeah, yeah,
that's not that doesn't sound appealing. But so I kind of had that in the back of my head in college, and my parents at this point they were like, well, because I said I kind of want to think about theater,
yeah,
and they were
yeah.
like, why don't you do communications? Because
Right.
you can be creative and you'll learn other things.
Every parent wants us to do something secure.
Right.
Yeah. So did you go the communications route?
For a year. I did
Yeah,
for a year, and then without telling them, I just switched my major to theater because
right,
I was spending every waking moment I had in the theater department. And in
right.
college, I went to a small college in Maryland, and we had maybe 8 theater majors, and a bunch of people like me who loved it in high school who just wanted to be
Yeah,
around it for college.
right.
But we had a couple of majors. We had this beautiful old 1880s theater and
Wow.
a couple of really great professors. And we just like, I basically lived in that building for 4 years. We would
Yeah,
sleep in
yeah.
there. We'd get up. We'd build sets. We'd paint. We would drive the
Right,
truck around to pick up things. We would anything, any production, even if we weren't in it on stage. You know, hey, we need a sound guy. We need a lighting tech. I don't know how to do that, but I'll
right,
learn.
right, right,
And that's kind of what it came to. And then like as my college career started going on, we were right outside Baltimore. I started getting every now and again we'd get professionals come from Baltimore or even DC, and sometimes they'd adjunct or they come see a show. And it's a small community, so word of mouth, like, hey, we've got a show at the Maryland Ensemble Theater. We really need
right.
somebody. Can you do it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I started picking up, you know, paid gigs, and not much, but a couple $100 here and there, and
Still, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and just kept going with it. So by the time I'm getting ready to leave college, I do a trip to Chicago because my cousin had lived out there, and I remember going out there as a kid, and he took us to this place called Second City when we were out there because he
Right,
said, "Oh, Chris likes Saturday Night Live. He'll think this is fun."
right. Sure.
And I've never forgot that. So my senior year of college, I did a spring break trip
Mhm.
during St. Patrick's Day weekend to Chicago, which
Wow.
if you, yeah, which if you
Yeah,
haven't been, it's a madhouse.
yeah. I'm gonna say Chicago. They do have some pretty solid Irish representation in that city, and they like to party. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Saw
great.
the river dyed green,
Yeah,
and we drank a lot. And but one thing I made sure we did, we went to one of the main stage shows at Second City, and
right.
I kind of fell in love with it. I was like,
Beautiful.
this is kind of music to my ears. How do I do
Yeah,
this? How do
yeah.
I get from where I am now? And so I, you know, I ended up going to the bar afterward, and a lot of the cast from the show we had just seen was in the bar.
Right.
And I just saddled up to him and I was like, hey, hi, I'm Chris. You don't know me. I'm about to graduate college. I'm sure you get this all the time. How the hell do you do this? What do I need to do? And they were, to their credit, those guys were really very kind, and they were like,
Terrific.
well, we came out here, we studied, there's a training center, you can take classes. And they were like, but it's, you know, it's tough, and
Hmm.
it'll take years if you're lucky. And
Yeah, yeah.
okay. So that following, I'd say midsummer after I graduated, I moved to Chicago and started working 4 jobs, and
Wow,
was
that's
a,
commitment.
was a bar back at Second City, and was taking like 3 classes there at any given time.
Right, right.
Um, and then I liked it. Like I really, I did well there. I really did.
Sure.
My contemporaries were people like Cecily Strong, who was on SNL, Alex Moffat, A.D. Bryant. We all kind of hit
Wow.
Chicago at the same time. Now, granted, like Alex was in a showcase with me, and I said to my director, this kid's one of the most talented kids I've ever seen in my life. And she goes, don't
Mm.
tell him that. His head's big enough. Don't tell him. And I said, but he is. He's so good. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
he's just on fire. And you know why they get cast. I never got, a lot of people did the showcase for Lauren and the writers that would come through. I never
Yeah.
got that opportunity. But the reason I really didn't get that opportunity, well, I wasn't chosen, but I was at the same time I'm at Second City, I'm literally backdooring, unbeknownst to me, I'm backdooring my way into my broadcasting career,
Mm.
because here's another crazy story for you.
Please.
One of my survival jobs was I was a tour guide on top of double-decker buses in downtown Chicago.
Right.
And I had I'm a huge history nerd. I love talking to people. So I really crafted in a 2-hour loop around the city. I had a solid
Right.
tour. I was pretty proud and pretty good at my job.
Right.
So
Right.
I just one day, there was a production company from a local TV show that was there. And I was just doing my shtick. I was being the guy I am on the bus. And they did some filming. They did an interview with me. I was playing off the host. And it was for this local morning show that had just started. And they, like, I want to say a couple days later, I get a phone call from the executive producer, and he goes, "Hey, you're really good on camera." Uh,
Hmm.
he said, "Do you want to do segments with us?"
Wow. You kind of got discovered.
I literally, it's the most
Yeah.
bizarre
Yeah.
discovery story. And I was like, yeah, I didn't even know what that meant. I was like, oh yeah,
Right. Right.
some for my reel. Okay, great.
Sure.
And
Why not?
and part of my Second City training is yes, and just say, like, opportunity comes up, say yes to it.
Right. Yep.
So, and the funny thing was, I start doing these segments, like taking people around town and like, hey, here's Chris at this old bakery and stuff like that. And I'm just like doing shtick because that's all I know. I
Right.
don't know how to
Yeah.
tell a story. I don't, but I will give myself credit. Like, I know how to stand and say things into a camera, even if it's me flapping my gums. So,
Chris, and that's the amazing thing, is that someone like you and other people that I know who have that in their DNA, it's kind of like a ball player, Ken Griffey Jr., who made playing center field look so easy.
yeah.
Oh, it's so easy to just climb the wall and steal those home runs. And, Joe DiMaggio back in the day, I understand, was the same way. He just made everything look so easy. If it's in your DNA, you don't even feel, and if you love it, it doesn't even feel like you're working.
Yeah.
You're just being you. And that just tells me to tell you that you were properly cast, that whoever discovered you figured out, because that's who they want, is somebody who's that, you know, yeah, there's no pressure to something like that, and you love it, put me in front of a group, in front of a camera, whatever mediums they are, and you'll be able to do the job. I've been fortunate. I've been able to do whatever job anybody's ever wanted me to do, in this realm, and it never seems like it's work,
Mhm.
just because it's my wheelhouse. It's where I feel comfortable.
And I will say too, part of it was just being naive. And I don't say that in a bad way, but like, I I have no idea that I'm on television now in market number 3 in one of the largest markets in the country.
Right,
And
right.
we've got a lot of people watching, and it's just me being me. And thank
Yeah.
God I had enough people around me who liked me and encouraged me. And I had a photographer I worked with a lot. It's this grizzled old news photographer guy. His name was Chris, also named Chris. And he, like, at one point, he kind of sat me down. He was just like, you're very good at what you do, but he's like, you're all over the map. He's like, why don't you focus? And he started giving me like really pointed notes. And if
Right.
we learned anything from Aesop's fables, I take notes.
Right.
So I start taking notes, and I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes, before we get to a shoot, why don't you call them and start setting this all up and tell them exactly what, and like, I'm getting producing 101 right there. And like, I
Absolutely.
didn't go to
Right.
school for this. So I'm
Yep.
learning all this stuff on the job. And you know, the funny thing is, it got to a point where they were doing less of my segments for whatever reason. And I was talking to my director at the time at Second City, this wonderful woman named Steph McCullough, and she's mentored like some of the biggest names of all time. And I said, you know, Steph, she said, oh my gosh, you know, you're doing so well. And I said, yeah, it's starting to taper off. I think I'm just going to kind of come back and start auditioning again and try and get on the touring company or the main stage. And you did it. She said,
Yeah.
you're on
Yeah.
TV now. She
Yeah.
said, you don't need this building anymore.
Right. Right.
And she said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go down to that TV station. You're going to sit there, even on days where you're not called, and you're
Right.
just going to sit and you're going to wait. And somebody's going to be like, Chris is here. Let's use Chris.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. Within a couple of days, I think I was there for a couple of days. I was sitting at the TV station in their like commissary little lunchroom thing. One of the producers came down. They said, hey, I need somebody to go interview this kid who is partially blind and he's trying to learn golf. And they're like, we think it's a great story. Can you do it? And I was like, yep. And then literally that just accelerated things from there. And within a couple of months, they brought me on as a full-time kind of features reporter, writer, producer. And a lot of that stuff I was still learning on the job, but they, you know, really gave me the space to learn. And I'm really grateful. I remember I won't say her name, but there was one producer there when the show started who I think had just graduated Northwestern Journalism School and was very keen on being on-air talent. And was only given this producing role. And she was very upset that this rube, if you will, was plucked from obscurity and given an on-air job. And I remember working with her on a story, and it was on this like 90-year-old woman who's still making pizza at this same restaurant. And I remember I was trying to kill her with kindness, and I was just like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you for, you know, setting this up. And like, hey, if you have any notes and stuff like that. And I remember it just being so contentious. And she's like, it's not my job to teach you what to do.
One of those.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay. I was like, well, you know, it's been a really great experience. And, you know, but I've gotten much more jaded since then, but
experienced, and you've lost your naivete. You know, it's you know, and I'm sure you might feel like it's jaded, but you're not the shiny new thing anymore, and there aren't too many things now that surprise you about your business because you've been there and done that. So you're an experienced pro at this point.
And I love that job. I really did. And I had so many experiences. Like they would just send me, I got to interview, I was saying this a couple of weeks ago, I got to interview Helen Reddy. Like, and all I knew Helen Reddy from was Pete's Dragon, the movie with Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney. Yeah, Mickey Rooney. And I don't
Helen Reddy, you know, again, to date myself, Helen Reddy, I mean, she was charting when I was in high school, you know, with I Am Woman. And various other hit songs. So she was very much, she and Olivia Newton-John were
Mhm.
kind of the Aussies who were invading America and the world at that time in the music scene. So that's how I remember.
I don't think I did a disservice in that interview, and I certainly I certainly paid deference to her because I
Yeah,
understood. But like I look back on that, and this was maybe 3 or 4 years before she died. Maybe, but
yeah,
but I look at that and I was like, if I knew now what I knew, what I could have known then, just
right.
how amazing a career this woman had, I would have done this interview
Yeah,
completely different. I like,
right.
and I don't feel I missed out, but like, I was sitting across from a legend, and it
Yeah,
just like,
yeah,
you know, I would have stuff like that would happen to me all the time. I got to know Harold Ramis a bunch because he lived in Chicago with his family or just
yeah.
outside, and
Great.
he was always good to talk about the arts and things like that, and just
Yeah.
people you get to meet and interact with. Like I was fortunate. I really and going speaking of Sally Field,
Yes.
um, when the movie Lincoln came out, where she plays
Which
Mary.
a movie I love and revere.
Yeah.
And Sally Field to me was amazing in that film and kept up with Daniel Day-Lewis every step of the way.
Some of my friends who consider themselves like real Spielberg
Yep.
purists,
Yep.
um, they they're like, no, they're like, well, there's some of his later work. And I said, okay, maybe some of his later work. I said, but I said, Lincoln is pure Spielberg. Like that is a beautiful movie from start to finish. It is a great
100%.
drama. It's shot
Yep.
well. Like the acting is incredible, but
Everything.
I love that movie. I saw that movie
Yep.
twice, and I just so happened I was in Chicago. There was a lot of buzz around that film when it came out. They did a lot of pre-production in Springfield, where Lincoln was
Hmm.
from. So the Abraham Lincoln Museum and Library held a gala in Chicago honoring Spielberg.
Hmm.
And when they don't do this every year, but when somebody, I guess, embodies something about Lincoln that they love, they have a big party for them, the gala, and then they
Sure.
do a
Sure.
portrait of them that will then go and hang in the library. So they did this for
Right.
Spielberg, and I got to go cover it.
Wow.
And
Fantastic.
it was an amazing night. I wanted to interview Steven. It didn't happen. I begged.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't happen. But here's the Sally Field story. So Sally Field's there. She's giving the speech before he gets up and gives his acceptance speech.
Right.
And the way they did the night was we're going to have a bunch of speeches, a performance. We're going to break for dinner. Then we're going to come back. We're going to present the new painting, and we're going to give him this award. So that's how the night goes. So
Right.
Sally Field gets up. She's the tail end of the first part. She gives her speech. It's a beautiful speech about Stephen, about movies, about this film that they did. They break for dinner. So
Right.
there is where the press gallery is. There is one unisex bathroom near the upper echelon where the press gallery was, where we were put, and it's also the most logical bathroom coming from the stage. So I
Right.
come out of the press gallery, I go down to the bathroom, and there's an even younger, more green reporter than I am. And she's standing there, and I go, are you in line for the bathroom? And she goes, yeah, not only am I in line for the bathroom, Sally Field's in there. I'm going to get her when she comes out. We're going to get a quote. And I went, in my mind, I'm like, that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
That's
Not
not
good.
what. So no sooner does she say this to me, I'm starting to go, I don't want anything to do with you. I really just need to use the bathroom. I
Right.
start looking at my phone, and within 10 seconds, this woman comes screaming out of the bathroom. And it's not Sally, it's either her publicist or whomever her bulldog is. And she
Right.
comes out and she goes, how dare you wait outside the bathroom to interview Sally? And this is all directed at me because now I look up and this girl is gone. The girl that was camped out is gone. And
Yeah.
I'm standing there and I went, oh. I was like, oh, no, 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 no. That was her, the girl
Right.
from Colombia. She's around the corner. I said, I literally just need to use the bathroom. She's like, she's not coming out until you leave. I said, but I need to use
Oh my.
the bathroom. And she was like, she's like, you disgust me. And I'm like,
Oh my.
so I just walked away, and I was like, if I ever meet Sally Field, I'm just gonna say, I'm so sorry. It wasn't me. I wasn't waiting to interview you or autograph you. I really just, there was one bathroom. That's it.
Oh, that's rich. That's
Yeah.
great. That's a great story. And
Oh,
you've reminded me of my early celebrity bathroom story
oh, please. Please.
with an actress named Glenn Close,
Mm.
who got very close to me on this one night. So one of my early day jobs, this goes back quite a ways. We were doing, I used to work at a company that did the test screenings for movies before they were released. You'd invite an audience in, watch the movie, then you give the audience a questionnaire, and maybe if they needed to lose a character or change the plot. But anyway, they'd bring the producers and the stars in after the lights went down in the theater to sit there amongst the audience, and they could hear the reaction. And so one of my gigs was walking the celebrities into the movie theater, and perhaps either sitting next to them, so as some are more vulnerable or neurotic than others, and like, don't go anywhere, Dave, stay right here. If they hate the movie, I'm gonna need to leave. So when we were doing, I can't remember which Glenn Close film it was, but Glenn Close and I we were waiting at a bagel shop across the street. This was in Pasadena, and you could see the lobby of the theater across the street. When it was totally empty, Glenn Close said, "Okay, good, you can walk me into the theater now." So we walk in, and as soon as we get in the movie theater, she says, "Oh, I need to use the restroom." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, there's the ladies' room. I'll stay outside and make sure nobody bothers you." Kind of like the bulldog that you were describing. And Glenn Close said, "Oh, no, 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 you've got to come in with me."
Oh
And
my.
I said, "I, you know, Ms. Close,
Are
I
you
don't
trying to
know,
seduce me?
well, yeah, I didn't get that vibe at all. I got
Okay.
like, what I got was, here's a scared person who didn't, and I had thankfully gained her trust. So I said, well, she says, no, you have to go in with me. Make sure there's nobody else in the restroom. And so I said, well, okay. I mean, I'm, trying to do my job, and it's a celebrity, do what they ask. So I'm wearing on this night, because it was a cold, rainy night in LA, probably in the wintertime. I have a trench coat on, black trench coat, very much the style of the time. As I start to walk into the restroom, she climbs underneath my trench coat, because she doesn't want anybody to recognize her, in the event that in the bathroom there should be somebody in there. We're like that, the horse on stage in vaudeville. She's the back end of the horse to my front end. She's got her arms wrapped around me, and we walk to, our four legs into the restroom. The coast was clear. She got out of the back of the trench coat, did her business. And, then we walked in, and I walked her into the theater, had her sit down. I didn't have to stay in, and, but I went to the lobby, and I'm sure one of my colleagues must have looked at me and said, "Dave, are you okay? What the hell happened?" And I'm sure I said something, because this would be me. I'm sure I'm paraphrasing myself, like, I got to process this. Okay, I'll let you know once I processed it. But anyway, that that was it. Now, the only reason I feel comfortable of saying, so I would never call out anybody, whether they're a celebrated person or not, on on any show. But Glenn Close has since gone on the interview circuit and has told about her very difficult upbringing in a cult. I'm not speaking out of turn. She's like had interviews, and this is where I learned that probably just within the past couple of years. And this is where, you teaches you not to be too judgmental about people, because all these years later, I said,
Yeah.
now it kind of makes sense to me
Yeah.
why that happened. And my heart now, goes out to her for her upbringing, you know. Better force, what an amazing talent that she turned out to be.
Oh, she's
But
amazing.
yeah, just fantastic, and I am a big fan. But segue, let's see how well I can turn this segue, Chris. This is part of your.
Here we
But
go.
being a big fan of a celebrated person brings me back to you. So, at what point is it that you then end up, or not end up, but decide that you're going to go to Los Angeles? And what was it that you were going to Los Angeles to do?
Well, that's a kind of crazy story in and of itself. The last year of my contract, and the last year I was really in Chicago was 2016. So I did get to cover the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series, which was
Yeah, there
pretty
you
awesome.
go. But you didn't get that interview with Steve Bartman, did you? Or
No,
that
no,
was a different
nobody.
year?
He's still elusive. He's still
Yeah,
elusive.
where is that guy? Where's Bartman? But anyway.
No, I tell you, the interesting thing was I was getting the sense I was working full time. Our show was churning along. At one point we were doing, it's a lifestyle and entertainment show. And at one point we were doing 3 hours a morning. So it
Right.
was 15 hours a week. And, it was a big show, and it got pared back down to 2 hours. But I started noticing kind of mid-year, we got new management. And we had a general manager when I first started there, and up until this point, who was just game for anything. You'd be like,
Yeah.
hey, I found this story, and it's in Springfield. Can we go to Springfield? Yeah, sure, go to Springfield. We once took the entire show to Hawaii, because it
Wow.
was a big
Wow.
sales pay to play, and I think we actually kind of lost money on it just because of all you getting everybody over there and the crew and the equipment and stuff. But this guy was he's since passed, but he was amazing. And he retired, and we got this new guy in, and it was a really rude awakening, because it was the first time I've ever talked to or been in a meeting with somebody. We were doing these group meetings with all the staff of the morning show. And I'm like, something's off. Something he's saying, oh, everything's great. And we really like the show. And yeah, everybody does a great job. I'm like, there's something disingenuous that's taking place here. And then I got into a one-on-one meeting with him, and I was pitching him an idea like I used to do to the old GM. And he was and I realized in the middle of the pitch, I'm sitting across the table from somebody who thinks I have no worth, who is looking
Yeah.
at me as a problem, not as an asset.
Yeah.
And I quickly wrapped up the pitch. I left, and I was like, I said, one thing, I'm either going to get fired. A couple things are going to happen. I'm either going to get fired or let go or not have my contract renewed, or I think they're going to cancel the show.
Right.
And turns out I was right about everything.
Wow.
I trusted my gut. I said, you know what? I think I got to get out of here before I'm asked to get out of here, or before I'm escorted out, because it was one of the other reporter kind of host people was let go on the spur of a
Yeah.
moment. Just walked in and, hey, thank you so much for 6 years. Here's the door. Security will see.
Adios. Yeah. Right.
And so that was a wake-up call. And then I said, you know what? I've been going out to LA a bunch on my time off. I've been meeting, I have friends out there. I've been taking meetings out there. And I got connected to a guy from Pittsburgh area that my family knew. He had a production company in LA.
Oh, wow. Great.
Called Experiment Media, and they got a show on the air. Do you remember the show Shaq Versus? And it was Shaquille O'Neal versus whomever, taking on like Shaq golfs, Shaq races cars, Shaq does this. That
I
was their
remember
show.
the title. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember the title. Yeah.
So that was their show, and they were kind of riding that wave. And
Mhm.
and after a couple of kind of meetings and phone calls, he goes, "Hey, why don't you come out? You can be a producer for me for about a year." And he
Beautiful.
said, it'll give you time to meet people. It'll give you a little like money in your pocket. You can get established. And he's like, and if we like each other and we keep building, great. If not,
Mhm.
it's fine.
Right.
So I said, okay, let's do it. We did this handshake
Terrific.
deal. I put in my notice in Chicago, packed up my entire apartment. I literally was driving across country, and I got to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was in an outlet mall in Santa Fe. I
Right.
was looking at a Navajo woven rug tapestry, and I'm like,
That's specific. Yeah.
I was like, this will look very nice in my new apartment because
Right.
I'm about to be a producer in Los Angeles. And
Hollywood. Exactly.
yeah. And then I get a call from this
Uh-oh.
guy, Todd's assistant, and he said, "Hey, the company's folding. We don't have a job for you."
Welcome to Hollywood. Or not.
And I never forget. I'm standing in the strip
Yeah.
mall in Santa Fe,
Yeah.
and I went, I can't go back. There's nothing
Yeah.
to go back to. My
Yeah.
apartment's
Yeah.
gone. All my stuff is being shipped. I just have to
Right.
go.
Yeah.
So I landed. I had about enough savings for 2 months,
Right. Right.
and I landed, and I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm gonna do. I
Right. Right. Right.
started, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So eventually what happened was you end up working for NBC Universal,
Mhm.
perhaps in various capacities. But one of the things that I remember was, I don't remember specifically, the time or date or whatever, when we met in a green room at Universal, NBC Universal. And I just remember thinking, and I consider myself to be a really good judge of character. It's gotten me to work, I won't brag about a whole lot. I have as many flaws as every human being on the planet. But one thing I think
Me
I've been
too.
pretty good at is judge a character. And I thought, I met you in this green room,
Mhm.
and after listening to you and then talking with you, I thought, this has got to be like one of the most sincerely nicest human beings that there could be walking around on the planet. And I can tell you that if anybody doesn't like this guy, I can tell you that person is the one that you shouldn't like. Because this guy, yeah, I just got this genuine sense of like human being emanating from you. And I just had good vibes. And I always enjoyed running into you on the lot or wherever it is we ran into each other, you know.
You know.
But, but one of the things I remember was, I think I was, because I used to work out on the back lot. I would jog or power walk or whatever. And I used to go by this set back there of a TV show that was back there. And I believe, I don't know if I saw you back there. I don't know if you had a headset on or something like that, but I saw you and I said, well, Chris is doing something else other than what he was doing back there, because now I'm seeing him here. It was like a feature show or a home kind of a
So
show.
Hallmark
Tell me,
had
yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, Hallmark had this daytime lifestyle show called Home and Family, and it was a
Right,
2 hour Monday through Friday show. And honestly, the format was interesting. It was developed by this guy who kind of put the Today Show together way back when. He left
right,
the Today Show and started this thing on the Hallmark Channel, and it really
right.
was for a vehicle for them to show off, like,
Yeah,
hey, here's Candace Cameron Bure in their next Hallmark movie. Let's talk to her for 10 minutes. But it kind
right,
of grew
right.
into some really fun celebrity interviews, good cooking segments, general like arts and crafts stuff. Anything they used to say, our viewer is an overweight older woman sitting in a rocking chair, stroking a cat, drinking tea. They literally would say that in meetings. That's who's watching.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I don't know in the era of the Me Too movement that you can now utilize that description, but that would be, that would be exactly how they
yeah,
would pinpoint who's out there in TV land watching. Yeah, yeah.
it was, and you know what? I started the one thing I did when I landed. I called in a bunch of favors. A lot of people from Second City.
Right.
Chris Witowski, I don't know if you know him. He's a great comedic actor,
Yeah.
and I knew him a bit from Second City. And I mean, we knew each other, but we weren't best friends. And I
Right.
literally, I took him out to coffee, and I was like, Chris, I'm not asking you for like money.
Right.
I'm asking you for a contact. I just need,
Right.
I'll do anything. So
Right.
I started becoming, nobody cared that I had 6 years of background working in Market 3 on a very competitive show as a producer or writer.
Right.
Nobody cared.
Right.
Nobody cared.
Absolutely. Not in LA.
Not
Not
in
in
LA.
LA.
Nobody cared. Nobody
Yep.
cared. In fact, well, I'll get to this, but Chris hooked me up with a friend of his who was essentially a second AD and ran production assistants. And I just started booking work on TV shows as an
Right.
assistant. I'm like, I can get coffee, I can lock up an area, whatever. So I
Right.
was
Right.
doing Lucifer. I worked a bunch on Lucifer. I worked a
Great.
bunch on, I did the pilot episode of SWAT. I was on
Oh,
that.
wow. Yep.
Um, I worked a bunch on the Orville, and I loved working on the Orville. I actually got to be the armorer for a day of reshoots because the armorer wasn't there, and they had
Wow.
all these. Now all these guns were inoperable. They were all space, like super soaker
Yep.
space guns. But
Right. Right.
I remember taking my job really seriously, and I'm like, I'm in charge of all
Good.
these weapons. I was like,
Absolutely.
I told everybody on set, I'm like, look, if I give you a gun, I want you to, I
Yep.
know it's fake, just keep it down.
Right.
Like,
Right.
don't play
Oh
around
yeah,
with it.
that resonates with me as I sit here surrounded by, at least on camera, a Western film set, or somewhat of a Western film set in New Mexico,
Yeah.
where things went a little awry, but another story for another day and well covered. But
Yeah.
anyway,
But
you were actually in armor doing the safety meetings and
yeah.
making, with all the weapons and things like that. Holy cow.
And it was, and I got to meet a ton of great people. I got to work with a ton of great people. I learned so much about the
Yeah.
industry. I worked on a feature film with Melissa McCarthy, that was just a murderer's row of comedic talent with her, Maya Rudolph, Joel McHale. It was a movie called Happy Time Murders. It was
Wow.
directed by Brian Henson, and
Hmm.
it was Sesame. It was all Sesame, no street. No, all street, no Sesame, and it
Right.
was an
Right.
R-rated puppet
Yeah.
movie. And here's what I learned. The biggest takeaway from that was, well, two, Melissa McCarthy is an amazing boss. Her and
Yes.
her husband know how to treat people exceedingly well. And they're like, you're going to
Right.
be here
Right.
for 20 hours today. We're going to take
Yep.
care of you. You're
Right.
too
Right.
tired to drive. Guess what? I'm
Yeah.
paying for a hotel room so you can sleep. Like stuff
Yeah.
like that. Um,
Yeah. They're great. They're great.
yeah.
And Ben Falcone and Melissa
Yep.
McCarthy.
But
Terrific.
the other thing I learned was, just because it's funny, like what I saw being created in front of me, I was like, this movie
Right.
is going to be dynamite. There's
Yep.
no way this movie is
Yep.
not going to be one of the funniest things
Yep.
in the world. People are going to be
Yep.
talking about this movie for years.
Yep.
It was so bad. I went on
Yeah.
opening
Yeah.
day. It's a dud of a movie.
Right. Right. Now, can I interject something, Chris? Do you
Sure.
mind, because you brought it up, because you mentioned Melissa McCarthy, you mentioned Maya Rudolph. So it's so funny. I had the mirror experience of that because I was on set, up close and personal, working with Maya and Ben and Melissa and Kristen Wiig in a minor hit film. Let's see if I can remember the name. I think it was called Bridesmaids.
Yeah.
And I learned, talk about learning, that was the first time I'd been on a comedy set in a long, long time. And I had no idea that the comedy world had changed. And Paul Feig, who was directing the film, has them where I'll just think about the airplane scene in Bridesmaids, one of the most iconic scenes that there is. Well, I'm on the airplane set. I'm in that little airplane set, and I'm just watching. I kind of knew who Kristen Wiig was. I didn't know who Melissa McCarthy was. Didn't know who anybody. I knew Paul Feig. Paul Feig's family. He's from Detroit. His family's from Detroit. I went to school with lots of Feigs. So I'm fortunate enough to be on this set, and they do the script, the way it's scripted, and then their writers are sitting off and they're making notes, and then they send in the notes, and then they do it saying the jokes that are written on the notes. And then after they've covered that, they just ask the actors, okay, do you guys have anything you want to do on your own? They just keep filming. And when Melissa McCarthy went through this whole thing with her seatmate, who she was accusing of being an air marshal, and of course her seatmate is her real life husband, Ben Falcone. And he says something about, she says, well, you have a gun, you're an air marshal. He says, well, where am I going to keep the gun? And she says, up your ass, or something like that. And I'm like, I'm literally saying, oh man, they're going to fire her for that. There's no way they're going to keep that. So there's that one. And then Kristen Wiig, Paul Feig says, do you want to do anything else? She says, yeah, I got an idea. And he goes, they go action. And she comes running down the airplane, and she looks out the window and goes, there's a colonial woman on the wing. And I'm about to bust the gut, but I'm like, and at that time, again, hadn't been exposed to this level of improv, I was like, oh my God, they're never going to keep that shit. Well, of course, all that stuff is the funniest stuff in the movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, you talk about, being humbled and educated. I'm like, okay, note taken. These are the new comedy gods. And Judd Apatow, he produced the film. So it changed my whole perspective. You just reminded me of that. And they were so wonderful to everybody on that set. So
the same thing with Orville too, because that was the Seth MacFarlane show, and they would have some heavy hitters come in. Like I wasn't there for the day, like Jason Alexander was in an episode, and like they would have, it was a murderer's row every day of like really great talent. And I was lucky, and I landed that job at Hallmark kind of on a whim. And it was a couple days a week. It was really just for me to make supplemental income. And then they let go of one of their hosts, Mark Steinis, and that was a whole drama around that. Yeah. But they said to me, they were like, "Hey, Chris, you've been around, you've been around a lot. You work with a lot of the hosts. You know the ins and outs. We're going to have a kind of a cavalcade of guest hosts coming through. We really would like you to step up and be a host assistant and kind of walk all these new people every couple of days through the process of like everything we do." Okay, great. So at one point I was working full-time at so here's how I did it. I worked 5 days a week on set at Hallmark and Home and Family. And then I was working weekends at Universal. I did that for 4 or 5 months solid. And I was just like sleeping, like get up, go to work, get up, go to work. And I met a lot of them, like really amazing people. We had great times. And it got to they narrowed down a host who I'd worked with a bunch. I thought we had a really good rapport. I was kind of his go-to guy. And he basically, when the time came to take our 1 month hiatus before the next season, right before we left for that hiatus, the production coordinator sat me down and said, this guy doesn't want to retain you as his assistant. And I said, so what does that mean for me? And they're like, well, you can PA again. And I said, don't you think I've proven myself? I said, I have 6 years under my belt producing on a show like this in a high market.
Yeah.
I've worked my tail off here. You don't think, yeah, I deserve a shot to even be like a producer assistant at this point?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were like, no. And I said, I'm good. I'm not
Yeah.
doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And right around that time too, I got asked, and I was kind of really put off by working on sets after that. But I really got called and kind of begged by a friend. They said, hey, we're doing reshoots on this new Charlie's Angels movie. It'll be a couple of days. We really need
Right.
somebody. You know, it's a lot of people you've worked with before, a lot of the
Right.
habitat people. And I was like, okay, all right, no problem. I'll do it.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
nail in the coffin for me. It
Yeah.
was, and again, like, I wouldn't trade that experience because I got to talk to Patrick Stewart and I got to tell him, like, I got to have this beautiful
Wow.
with Patrick Stewart where I said, I was like, just so you know, you like, you know, like your work has inspired me my entire
Mm.
life. And he just turned to me and he's like waiting to go into a scene. And he turned to me and he's like, kindness is just all around us. He's like, that compliment made my day. And I
Oh,
kind of lost it. I almost started crying. And
yeah, of course.
and that day was like, that couple of days was nuts. And we had the
Yeah.
biggest stars coming in for cameos and stuff. But it turned like, there was such a bad experience on that set because we were we were literally on a mountain outside
Yeah.
LA on this mansion set.
Yeah.
Base camp was, I'm not kidding you, a mile down the mountain where all the trailers were. And
Yeah.
we had I think it was a crane crew that came up and their whole job is just operating this giant mobile crane.
Yeah.
They told me like an hour before they wrapped, they're like, hey, we really need our paperwork before we can get out of here. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling down to base camp. Please send up a couple of packets for these guys. They need to get out of here.
Right.
By
Right.
by the time they're wrapping, they're still not, no one's sent up the paperwork. I
Yeah. Yeah.
literally commandeer a van.
Oh,
I get a Teamster, but I commandeer
right.
it.
Yeah.
I
Right.
say, we got to go down to base camp. I need 4 packets and we're coming right back. Boom, done.
Right.
We get down
Yeah.
there, get the packets at the HQ trailer, get back up, give these guys, they're like, oh, thank you so much. We would like this, you know, it would have really set us back. And so, and they were already getting out of there late. So
Right. Right. Right.
they get the packets. I help them go back down the mountain. I drop the packets at the thing. The base camp PA starts reading me the riot act. Like, you don't
Right.
come into my trailer and
My
take
God.
my packets. And she's
Yeah.
like, do you think I'm not working hard? And like, I let her yell at me for 5 minutes. And then when she stopped, I went, do you honestly think I don't think that you are working hard? I said, look around you. Everybody
Yeah.
is working hard.
Yeah.
I said, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you this, I'm on the walkie-talkie and I'm communicating with you and you're not communicating back with me. And I said,
Mm.
and you know what? We can't have that. We just
Yeah.
can't have that. I said, I don't want to denigrate you in any way. I know you got a lot on your plate down here, but all you have to say is, hey, can you come down and get these packets? I just can't handle it right now. That's all you got to tell me. And
Yep.
I said, otherwise, I have to do what I had to do, which was come down here. And she's like, I don't know who you think you are. And I was like, don't worry, you'll never have
Oh
to
boy.
see me again. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I got in the van, finished the day, and I went, and
Yeah.
luckily it's the last day of the shoot. And I went, I'm done.
Yeah. That
And you
was
know
that.
what? I like a year, like a couple months later, the pandemic hit, and you know what?
Right. Right. Absolutely. And
And
that just
everything
kind that
changed.
that was that was the big stop button on everything. And we were
Yeah.
all kind of frozen in place. And wherever you were at that time, most of us didn't realize at the time that this was going to be the point where we were going to have to stop and redefine and rewrite what the future was going to be. We didn't necessarily know that at the time.
Well, and
But
that's why I went back into news
yeah.
or broadcasting, let's say, because you know, when the pandemic hit, after 70 days of sitting in my apartment, and I put some feelers out really tentatively right before the pandemic, just to different production houses, TV stations, different organizations
right.
around the country, just seeing what's out there. Because I was
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
lost at that point.
right.
And I tried to get something off the ground with NBC Universal, and it really started to pick up steam, and then it was killed,
Yeah.
essentially killed on, died on the vine once the
That
man.
wasn't the project where you thought maybe you wanted me to be the mayor, to play the mayor, was it? There was some project.
Oh no, I wrote a Hallmark while I was at Hallmark. I wrote a Hallmark movie because I'm watching all these people shill their Hallmark movies, and I went, "Well, I can do this." So, a
Yeah,
buddy of
yeah.
mine, we wrote it was called The Christmas Star, and
Uh-huh.
I literally based it on a town near where I grew up, Ligonier, Pennsylvania, but we called it Fort Winter, and
Right,
it's a Christmas whodunit. Somebody steals
right,
the historic Christmas star from the town, and
right.
whodunit. So we wrote it, and we were shopping it around a little bit, and it actually got a little love from these producers over at Lifetime, and we were
Uh-huh.
getting notes, and we were working on
Yeah,
it, and then again the pandemic hit, and everything just
of
kind of
course.
fizzled out. But
Yeah,
I still
yeah,
would love to make, if I ever hit the lottery and I get a couple $1 million,
yeah,
I would love to make a cheesy Hallmark movie. I really would.
yeah. Well, you know what? And now our time is getting a little short, but we
Oh,
have
I
enough
know I'm
time.
a talker. I'm sorry.
No, but this is Chris. This is gold, baby. This is spun gold. Thank you for sharing this with me. And this is why I would never, you got somebody who's got a good story to tell you. I want to hear it. I know the people. I envision that the people who watch and listen to my podcast, this Zoomcast, are, it's not a real broad audience, but it's people who are in the industry or want to be in the industry. So being this level of specificity and detail that you've given, that's the kind of thing that somebody like that I think would find very valuable. You got to know how what really happens here and how this, and you also have to know whether you're as young as Chris is or whether you're as mature as I am, that this can actually be done. This can
Well,
actually be done.
Dave,
You know,
humble brag, if this is any indicator.
well,
Uh,
this is what I wanted to make sure we got to. I recognize what you're holding there as a piece of hardware that I've only been able to see from a distance. I've never actually held one, and yet, my friend Chris DeRose, you are holding an actual, and I'm literally getting chills, and I'm not kidding. You're holding an Emmy Award that I believe has your name on it.
it
Am
does
I
have my
correct?
name on it. Yes, it does.
Chris,
For all things
tell me.
breaking news coverage, but it's still Miami.
It's an Emmy Award, which means that you have achieved the top of the mountain in your industry. And you know, it blows my mind. This is why, I as I like to say, and this is I always have to fit in something that I've done before we get to how great you are. But I have been lucky enough to be in movies, TV shows, and productions that have been nominated for every major award that there is. However, I did not get to take home a trophy because all of those productions would have done quite well without me. And I was just thrilled to be asked to be part of those things. But in your case, the Emmy Award that you won could have not been gleaned or garnered without your contribution. So I congratulate you as somebody
Thank you.
who knew you yeah, during these frustrating times when you had gone from producer and now you're on a set and now they're throwing out all of your very valuable experience because that's what they do.
Yeah.
And I'm so thrilled that somebody recognized you for the talent that you are. And just again, this will come full circle. The fact for me as a fan of yours and a fan of KDKA, I'm like, this is I'm a fanboy all over again. So,
Well,
you
thank
know,
you.
yeah,
I'm blushing. I'm grinning ear to ear. Thank you. That it means
absolutely. And of course, it's I have seen your work, and I especially I took it to heart the story that you did the Negro Leaguers who finally got their justice due with their they were in unmarked graves, and they were given uh
Headstones.
headstones identified with their, they had headstones with their names. And I literally just rewatched this because to me, this is a fantastic story. You had Josh Gibson's, that was his grandson there?
It was his great grandson who lives in Pittsburgh, and they're doing
Amazing.
this project. Like, again, if I had excess money, if I ever won the lottery, this is something I would give money to because it's great. They've got 20. They have identified 20 unmarked graves. They've done 11, and that's just in Western Pennsylvania. They want to take this thing national, and
Well, in the Pittsburgh area, where you had, now I'm just going to show off a little bit, where you had like the old Negro League Pittsburgh Crawfords, and you had the Homestead Grays.
Great
and
graves, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, so that means that Josh Gibson, was a presence there in Pittsburgh, one of the greatest hitters of all time. When they asked Babe Ruth who was the greatest home run hitter of all time, Babe Ruth would say it was Josh Gibson.
Yeah.
So, and then, so I'm as a baseball fan, just knowing that you were among the spirits of these wonderful, amazing athletic talents who were not recognized during their lifetimes the way they should have been. So,
well, and what he told us that didn't make it into the piece was his great grandmother, Josh Gibson's wife, she didn't have a headstone, and they didn't even know about this. They knew he had a headstone, but somebody from Ohio like came out and saw him out, and they said, "Do you know your great grandmother doesn't have a headstone?" And he goes, "What are you talking about?"
Wow.
So they started digging into it. Well, not digging into it, but they started looking into it.
Yeah.
And they were like, sure enough, like, his wife doesn't have a headstone. And the project's great, but like, I've still been fortunate. I've covered, I won my Emmy for breaking news. There was as they remember, a terrible train derailment last year in East Palestine, Ohio. And I was one of the first reporters on scene. I believe, as far as I know, I was the first reporter to go live on the scene while it was happening. And and I gotta say, it was, it was terrifying because it was like something out of it. Really, I was standing about 300 yards off of this train derailment until the officials kind of said, "Hey, this is not a good place to stand. You're in a kill zone." We were getting our shots and stuff, but that was one of those mornings where it's like, oh, this isn't just a day at the office. Like, this is, you got to gear up, and you got to rely on the wherewithal of everything you've learned in the past. So I'm proud of it. And also, I got the same year I got nominated. I did this really wonderful feature on this old shoemaker who was retiring. This guy from Italy, been a shoe cobbler in Pittsburgh for almost over 50 years. And I got nominated for that. And I was very, very proud of that because that was a straight up feature. And
fantastic.
And we have a bunch more submitted this year that we did. So we'll see,
Well,
it's nice to get an award.
It is absolutely, it is nice to be nominated, but to actually take home the hardware is a whole other level of experience, glee, joy, and gratitude. And I'm so glad that you're getting to experience that. But I suspect, Chris, that you're just laying the foundation now for what is going to be and what is a fantastic career. But I am going to be watching because I think that you are going to go places, and I am going to be able to truly brag to my friends. That guy, Chris DeRose, friend of mine. Yeah. And I'll say that
God's ears.
I'll say that with a whole lot of pride. And I've been blessed to know you. I was also blessed that you did give me a couple of days on our film Footsteps. One of the reasons I knew that you were the go-to guy is because I knew you knew how to do everything. And I think we probably had you do everything because, independent producer, very small crew. So to have somebody who knew every department and what to do, can you go here? Can you go there? Because you know how any productions are. I mean, I bought craft services. I ordered the catering, and I'm also the guy doing the directing and the producing.
You let me, the thing and you flattered me a ton, so I'm going to throw some flattery to you. You were always, any interaction I had with you, I always enjoyed because you were kind. We always had really wonderful conversations about a myriad of things. But like when I worked with you on set, like you not only gave over to me, and this is like your baby, and you not only gave over your trust to me, but like if I remember correctly, you were letting me call shots and like change ups and stuff like that. And for me, like nobody gave me that kind of control. And it really like I've never forgotten that. It really meant a lot to me. And I'm grateful for all the experiences I've had, be they good or bad. And somebody a while back was like, well, you kind of washed out of LA. And I'm like, I don't feel like I washed out of LA at all. Like I feel like did I achieve everything I wanted to? No, but I did a lot more than a lot of people, and I got to have some really amazing experiences. And who knows? Like, and then the world shifted. Like it's silly to it's silly to say, but like the pandemic was a big reset, and I knew that I'm like I could stay here, or I could really like make a play somewhere else. And that's how I went to Montana for a year. I worked out there doing news, and really like just learning, just humbling myself again, and just bringing what I knew, learning a lot. The same thing. I went down to Salt Lake for a year and did the same thing. And then I wound up back here in Pittsburgh, close to family. And I've been away for like 15 years. So it's nice to be close to my family. It's nice to, have people around here. And it's nice to also like still be creative. Like the one I said to, I was talking to these school age kids not too long ago. They were doing a tour, and I said, look, they were asking me for advice, like on the spot. I was in the middle of writing something. My head was not there. And I'm like, who are you? I'm sorry, what? But I said, they were like, yeah, what's some good advice? And I was like, try everything and fail, and just stay open to like whatever comes your way. I said, I don't have a degree in journalism, but I have a degree in theater. I know how to tell a story. I try to stay well read. I try and stay up on things. I try and understand situations. I try and learn new words. I try and find different ways of communicating ideas, and it all works. And like, that's my best advice, is just it goes back to Second City. Say yes and if you fail, all right, just keep saying yes and it'll flip around. Or
absolutely. And what do they say? It's not how many times you fail, it's how many times you get up.
Yeah.
And
or you redirect. Like when I was working at Hallmark, I really was like, I went through a week where I was like, I'm done. I'm gonna not be a lawyer, but like I'm gonna get a normal job. None of it worked out. And then I was like, well, no, you just take what you learned there and pivot. I think Tom Hanks said it best in a like a TED Talk. They were doing a roundtable with a lot of celebrities about a year ago, and Tom Hanks said, I wish I knew when I was younger the phrase, this too shall pass. You're not having a good week. You're not liking where you are right now. This too shall pass. You're having a great time. You're in a hit movie. This too shall pass. And he said, I wish my younger self knew that and appreciated it. And, I had a rough few months not that long ago. And I kept saying to myself, this too shall pass. It's a journey. It's a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And that the thing about life is that, it doesn't go like this. It goes like this. And you're right. This will pass and this will pass. Keep it the old even keel. celebrating the victory as they come along, mourning and grieving when you have to.
Mhm.
This is all part of life. But Chris, I want to thank you very, very much for spending this time with me. As a friend, it's great to see you because I know I
It's
haven't
so
seen you
great to
since the
see you. I've
pandemic.
missed you so
You
much.
know, back at you, and again, I'm loving the work that you're doing, and I'm really proud of you. And it's going to be fun to, like I said, to see your career as it continues, but also as I'm listening to you, to just listen to the man that you've become, and which is no surprise to me. You are one of the good guys. So anyway, this is Chris DeRose, KDKA. I'm signing off for you. Do I sound like you? This is Chris DeRose,
Reporting in
KDKA.
downtown Pittsburgh. Chris DeRose.
There you go. Terrific. But at this point, I'll do what I always do, Chris, is since I always remind myself at the end of every one of these conversations that, oh, wait, this is a Zoom I'm on. But I always have to search for the little red button that ends the thing. So there it is. I found it. Chris, thank you so much. I will be in touch and let you know when this airs, or whatever they call it, broadcast streams on YouTube podcast. That's our home. And again, thank you so much and continued success. This is Chris DeRose, KDKA.
Thank you, Dave. See ya.
You bet. Take care now. And there's the first button, and I already blew it. You just gotta press. Okay, now I've got it. All right.